Welcome to the Gallatin County Democrats Legislative Check-in for March 30th, 2025. I'm your host, Joe Hancock, and our guest for this evening is Representative Becky Edwards from House District 61, covering MSU and the surrounding area. As a reminder, this event is being recorded and will be shared on our YouTube channel. If there are any questions, you can enter them in the chat or raise your hand using the Zoom React menu at the bottom of the screen. Representative Edwards was born in Cedar Rapids, Iowa, and moved to Montana to earn a Bachelor of Science in English Literature and Political Science from Montana State University. She now serves as the Executive Director of Mountain Mamas, a national conservation organization, and is a co-principal of the marketing communications firm The Nest Collective. She is currently serving in her first term in the Montana legislature. Welcome, Becky.
Thank you. Delighted to be here.
Glad to have you. And the raise hand thing, I think we could probably just pop it with this audience. We could probably just pop in and say something. So, Becky, before we really dive into any sort of questions, I just wanted to kind of get your impression of things this session, especially since you've been back from transmittal for a couple of weeks.
Well, yeah, gosh. And so thanks everybody for joining. And if you're watching this later, thank you for doing that and staying engaged. I was so tickled to come home for transmittal break, and we had just an amazing town hall meeting that Joe and the crew organized, and all of us representatives and senators were so honored to be there. And so if you were there, thank you. Even if you weren't there, thank you. Like it was phenomenal to see that many people show up and want to stay engaged. So that definitely buoys us and gives us hope and the encouragement we need to head back to the crazy. So I would I would definitely say, it's been interesting as a first, freshman legislator, um, to serve in this capacity. I think there's so many wonderful components of it that far outweigh some of the more frustrating aspects and, quite frankly, hurtful aspects. One of my dearest friends in the legislature that I've made so far is Representative Zoe Zephyr, this hard charging and amazing gal from Missoula, and she is so often the target of a lot of incredibly hurtful legislation. And so some of that stuff is tough to take and tough to listen to, even for me. So I can't imagine what it's like for her. But at the same time, there's some just wonderful, phenomenal people in that building on both sides of the aisle. And I feel very honored to be there. One of the things that I was most apprehensive of was serving, at the midpoint of my career. I'm quite busy with my day job. I also have 3 children. One is in college, 2 are still at home. And so it's just a challenge, being away from them. This weekend is a perfect example. We had Saturday session yesterday, so I didn't really get home until about 3 o'clock. It was prom here for BHS yesterday, so ran home as quick as I could, helped our middle little lady get dressed and ready, and took a bunch of photos, and she rushed off to prom. And today it's a flurry of, we just got home from skiing at Bridger, and doing laundry, answering emails for my day job, helping the kids get organized for another week, saying hi to my husband. So I'm headed. Just having technical issues. Hold on just a second.
I was worried this one on my end.
Okay, how is that? Can you guys hear me yet?
Hey, you're sounding good. Sounding clear.
Okay, sorry. Again, it's the joy of kids. One of my kids' earbuds just connected to my iPad. So, um, apologies. So anywho, but yeah, that is life right now. I may be home for about 24 to, if I'm lucky, 36 hours once a week. And so that's been pretty challenging to be away from my family this much. So I would say out of everything we're dealing with this session, that's definitely the hardest for me. Um, but otherwise, yeah, it's been a fun treat. We have a great leadership. Our minority leader, Katie Sullivan's fantastic. We have a really wonderful um, caucus from Bozeman. And so it's just been a trip. I'm feel very lucky to be there and honored.
We feel lucky to have you there. And the other 12 from our caucus between the two chambers, which is an insane number.
Yes, it is. It's, between Bozeman and Missoula, I can't remember. I think Missoula may have just one more than us, but we're a healthy group. And so we're very tickled to be representing growing Bozeman.
I suppose we'll kind of jump off. I gave you alluded to this earlier, but you talked about during the town hall the issues with trying to do any legislative actions that involve campus specifically, which
Hmm.
since you represent that area is a very specific struggle for you and maybe one person Missoula and a couple others trickled around the state. And I just want to ask you about your experience with that one bill. Let's see, it was House Bill 820, the one that you sponsored about free
Yeah.
on-campus parking for veterans. And I just wanted to kind of give you the floor to kind of talk about what that experience was like and how you'll be moving forward with similar
Yes.
processes.
Great question. Thank you. So that bill it was a collaboration between Pat Flowers and myself, and Senator Flowers had been having a handful of conversations with some constituents from MSU here in town. And so Senator Flowers and I, we share our districts overlap. And so he also represents MSU, and a handful of professors, professional staff, and students, all from MSU, had chatted with Senator Flowers about the opportunity to perhaps subsidize and offer free parking for our wonderful veterans. And so Senator Flowers had a few of those conversations before the Senate or the session started. And then I sit on the State Administration and Veterans Affairs Committee. And it's a great committee. I definitely my favorite one. I didn't think it would be, and it is. It is a wonderful committee. We get to, have great conversations with our wonderful military, veterans, police, first responders, and then also we get to oversee election process and how, our state Department of Administration in the state is run, and it's a wonderful committee. So, anywho, Senator Flowers knew I was on that committee, and he said, "Hey, I've had these conversations about, being able to honor our serving and veterans in this fashion." So we put our heads together and drafted a bill that would offer free parking to any, tenured track professor, professional staff, or student. For any of the university systems. So you could be going to the University of Montana, you could be, Montana Tech, yeah, any of the university district or the university system schools. Put the bill in, co-signed by tons of Republicans. Everyone loved it. And then we got a legal note back. And so legal notes come if your bills are either potentially unconstitutional or if they run in conflict of another administrating agency. And so this bill ran into conflict with the Board of Regents. And it was one thing that we had thought about. We didn't probably give it as much thought as we should have. But luckily, I had a great conversation with the staff attorney for the Board of Regents and called her up right away and said, "Hey, we've got this bill that's got great bipartisan support. We've got tons of, existing staff and students that want to get behind it. We've got a legal note on it. It seems like it's running afoul of, our jurisdiction versus the Board of Regents jurisdiction." And she said, "Yep, sure it does." And so what we ended up doing was pulling the bill from the state legislature, but that opened a door that, we previously, at least Pat and I hadn't had with the Board of Regents directly. And so what we are doing is we have a meeting set up for mid-May with this wonderful gal, Allie, who's their staff attorney, and with the Board of Regents to basically take our bill draft, present it to the Board of Regents, and hope that, we can move together, Senator Flowers and myself, to basically enact our bill, but just going through the Board of Regents channel. So that was a fun learning experience. I completely freaked out. I was like, oh my God, I have a legal note. And as a freshman legislator, you just don't always know what these things are. But, we have, what's another thing? The Capitol is chock full of amazing legislative staff. Our clerk of court, our bill drafters, the fiscal division. I mean, everyone, our custodians, the sergeant at arms, that building is just full of helpers, and they're happy to help you at all hours of the day. No question is too dumb. They will move mountains to assist. And so that was a wonderful process. I ran up to the clerk of court and I said, "I don't know what to do with this." And she scooped me up and said, "We're going to walk down to legal and we're going to have a chat." And so that was a good, everyone, I think, probably at some time in their legislative career either has something go a little haywire with the bill, and that was my first. But I'm really tickled that we're able to, again, have a good collaborative relationship with the Board of Regents, and hopefully move this idea along just through their channels instead of ours.
And I, of course, am a little more invested in that bill since I am a veteran who works at MSU. So
Yes.
that if that gets done, I don't have to pay for parking to go to work anymore,
Exactly,
which
which is expensive.
it is. It very much is.
Yes.
And I also have to remember to renew it every year, which is a frustrating thing.
Yep. And hopefully, if we're able to move this bill draft forward, you would never have to renew it. You'd get this one time. You can park as much as you want for as many years as you want, as long as you're still employed.
Well, that is good to hear. And since that job allows me to do stuff like this about as much as I want, I think I'll stay there a while. Well, the next thing I want to go ahead and cover while we're here is your bill on early literacy interventions. House Bill 654 that I'm seeing on my sheet here was tabled in committee, but I
Was,
think that and which just
was,
means that we're just going to have to try it again
it
with
does. So
with
that's an
with more
interesting,
message and
yeah,
build some
that's,
momentum.
I think so. And that's an interesting story as well. So, I am so lucky to be able to represent one of the most progressive districts in the state. And so, what I feel like my job is to look ahead, sometimes quite far ahead, in terms of what are the priorities for Democrats. Maybe not this session, maybe not next session, but maybe 5 sessions from now, 10 sessions from now. And because I have the luxury of not being in a, terribly competitive district, I can really put out there, where do we want to be? I can run quite progressive legislation, knowing that, like this bill probably is going to get tabled in committee. But what we can do with that is start having these conversations in that building and start putting those milestones out there. And so this bill, HB 654, really came out of personal experience for me. I was a single mom for a long while. My daughter, we have 3 girls. Our youngest is mine. Our 2 elder girls are my husband's, and they're all ours, though. And my youngest and I, we were just by ourselves from the time she was born until she was about 5. And I nearly went bankrupt putting her through Montessori. And I'm the daughter of educators. My sister-in-law is an elementary school principal. I know how important, especially that, 3 to 4 year old ages for kids to get into some sort of at least a half day, early literacy program. So, I did it, but it was painful. And I knew that, if this is painful for me, it's got to be painful for many other Montanans. And then I started to do a little bit more research. Like I mentioned, my sister-in-law is an elementary school principal in Iowa, where I grew up. I talked to her a lot about it, reached out to some friends in Wisconsin, Minnesota, Colorado, Arizona, and just kind of did a little bit more research. How are other states doing these early literacy programs? Turns out lots of states have state funded 4 year old programs in their elementary schools. Most, in fact, do. And so, again, consulting with some great education leaders, like our former school superintendent here, Rob Watson, who now works for the school superintendent associations in Montana. Um, Caitlin Jensen, who runs 0 to 5 Montana. It's a wonderful nonprofit here in the state that I actually did some work with my day job at the Mountain Mamas. Ran this idea by her. Rob was bought in. So anyway, what the bill is intended to do is to expand the 4 year old early literacy program with a bit of a fun caveat, I think, which is to allow a mixed delivery system. So if your school system maybe doesn't have enough classrooms, maybe doesn't have enough staff, you could partner with a local provider. So you could partner with a local Montessori or a local daycare, and utilizing like an MOU probably between the district and the private provider. And the kick was too is that you'd have to have an MFPE certified teacher that could be either a school district employee or a private entity employee, but you'd be able to offer these services that would bring in more funds for the school district. It would also support local small businesses. So that's a big component of the bill. And then also a large component, but another component of the bill is expanding the technology and facilities grant that's already enabled at the state legislative level for those districts that are interested in bringing in more 4 year old early literacy to be able to capture this grant program to perhaps, retrofit a classroom or purchase new equipment, not huge, not building new building type of grants, but, if you've got an unused storage room that might be a great reading nook for early 4 year olds, something like that, you could, use those funds to help enable that process of bringing in 4 year olds into elementary school classrooms. So that was the bill. And we had great support. We had a wonderful hearing. The House Education Committee is a highly functioning committee. I cannot say that about a lot of the other committees in the Capitol, but it is chaired by this wonderful woman that I've gotten to know, Republican Linda Rexton. She is a former school administrator. She fervent champion of public education. And that committee is just chock full of wonderful educators. Melissa Romano, Peter Strand from Bozeman, a former elementary school teacher, Mark Thane, he's a former administrator from Missoula. Just wonderful educators are on that committee. And so we had such a great hearing. The bill does have a pretty robust fiscal note. It's about $7 million annually. But, these are the steps that at least us as Democrats want to get to. We want to have any 4 year old who wants to have an early literacy program, who wants to get that kickstart, that jump start on their success. Their families understand that that's a priority. All of the statistics say, $1 invested in early literacy has a return on investment of about $16 to $17. So it's a huge jump and great leg up for the youth of Montana, and it supports small business and families. So we had a lot of folks that came in as proponents, no opponents. And yet they did executive action on it on Friday, and Representative Rexton, who is a dear friend of mine, we sit on another committee together, pulled me aside the day before, and she laid out the reality of that building. And she said, she's like, this is a great bill. and this building isn't ready for it yet. And so what we're going to do, it was tabled, unfortunately, in committee, but that doesn't stop the bill. So what, Representative Rexton and myself, and I think a couple other folks in the Education Committee are thinking about doing is creating a study resolution to take my bill and a couple other early literacy ideas and to, give us the time and ability to study those, provide some more data and metrics to support this bill the next time we bring it. So I'll be bringing it again next session and, maybe expanding or tweaking things, but I'm, I feel like the most important thing I can do in my job here is to support the broadest amount of Montanans. And what I kept hearing when I was door knocking is that, our taxes are high, our, affordability in Bozeman is so high, but yet our quality of life is amazing. And our public schools are amazing. And we want to support our public schools. And so I'm tickled to be working on this, and I'm really excited to bring it back again next session.
I'm excited to hear it come around again and kind of keep track
Maybe
of
we'll
how it
get it
goes.
passed.
Yeah. And like most anything, I tell people this all the time. A bill, when it gets uh, introduced the first time, especially the bigger ideas, you don't really put it out there expecting it to pass the first time. It's kind of like the
Right.
Romney gym renovation at MSU. That took about
Yes.
10 years to finally get funding for, and it is
Yes.
now completely done and being in use. And that was a huge lift.
Yes.
And and what kind of intrigues me is like your bill in 2019 probably would have been more popular than it is now because at that point it was a bipartisan issue to provide 3K, like
Mm-hmm.
preschool
Yeah.
by the state. That was a bipartisan issue that even the person that beat Chris Pope for the legislature in 2018, John Kanoki, that was something that he ran on and was still posted on his website up until he ran for lieutenant governor. And now we're just trying to get any sort of early literacy program in place for 4-year-olds. Like we
Yeah.
took kind of a step back. Is
Indeed. But again,
what we're good.
we're having more of these conversations. We're going to continue to push them ahead, and who knows what's going to happen. I mean, that's everyone on this call knows, and everyone who's listening to this knows it. Politics and progress is not always a straight shot, and so a lot of times there's some jumps and some pullbacks and some jumps and some pullbacks. And, if we keep progressing, if we keep engaging folks on both sides of the aisle on this issue, if Montanans keep speaking out and saying this is something that we want, we'll get there.
Yeah, sometimes we just got to put stuff back in the zeitgeist that kind of falls out. And I'm
Yep.
getting a little wonky here, but it's kind of Hegelian dialectic where you have the thesis where things are going in the right direction, the antithesis that pulls us back, the 2 steps forward, 1 step back, and then the synthesis that brings us beyond. And then we just kind of a weird spiral. And
Exactly.
does yes, does anyone have any other questions or any questions? Elizabeth, yes, let's hear what you have to say. I just,
Let's see. Elizabeth, you're still on mute.
if you need to, you can
Yeah,
if you
sorry,
can hold the space bar.
it was being weird. It's yeah. So yeah, first a shout out for Christy Michael, an awesome educator. Some of you probably know her, and yeah, and I keep seeing her in Zoom calls, but we don't get to talk together. So Christy, if you're in Bozeman, we'll figure out a way through Zoom maybe to connect. So, but no, I was wondering about the numeracy bill that
Mm-hmm.
Melissa Romano put. It sounds very similar. What's the success or non-success of that one? Yeah.
Um, goodness. Yeah, I'm
That's a
pretty
great
sure.
idea. They both are. I mean, we need them. Yeah.
Yeah, gosh, I'll have to look up. I can maybe do that while we're talking here. I can look up on the
I guess I could look up her bill.
bill tracker.
Yeah.
Let's see. But yeah, Melissa has been doing some really great work. Um, in the education committee, and she's had a lot of good success. She's also, this is her sophomore year at the legislature, and then she served in the interim education committee, which is wonderful. So she's had some jump starts on some really great bills. Let's see. Okay. Early numeracy. Yeah, that's right. So hers passed out of the House. If I remember correctly, it wasn't an easy pass, but we did it. And it is over on the Senate side. Oh no, yeah, this did go pretty easily. I take that back. And so this is, I believe, the second time that Melissa has brought this bill, and it is over in the Senate. Looks like, oh, they did. Nice. Senate Education Committee is not as high functioning as the House. So it does look like that it did pass out of the Senate Education Committee, which is a Herculean effort. So if you see Melissa next, give her a pat on the back. So it does look like it's at least out of committee. So they'll be hearing it on the Senate floor probably within the next couple of weeks. The Senate, as you all probably know, is a little backlogged because of the shenanigans that they have had to deal with on their side. So they're a few weeks behind, but hopefully they'll get it on the Senate floor soon. So hopefully we'll get that one passed. That would be fantastic.
If I could ask one more question, and then I'll cede. But your e-vehicle study bill, I thought it was awesome. It's sitting somewhere last time I looked. So do you think it can? What do you think for this year? Yeah.
So I've got two. So I had a study resolution that was just aimed at studying, EVs are new. And in Montana, as you all probably know, our road maintenance fund is mainly funded by gas tax, and EVs don't contribute to that. So last session, Senator Logie worked on, pulling together some additional tax, both within a registration fee and a kilowatt per hour tax for EVs, and kind of a shot in the dark. This is new technology, and Senator Logie gave it his best shot, and I proposed a study resolution to just see, are we on the target, like where are we at? Unfortunately, it was tabled on the House floor. We got it out of committee, and I think it was tabled just last week. And there are some hot button issues in the legislature, and electric vehicles are one of them. And I kept thinking, gosh, with Elon Musk there stirring the pot in DC, maybe that some of that acrimony with EVs would ease a little bit. It has not. In fact, they passed a electric vehicle resolution, basically saying that, Representative Greg out of White Sulphur Springs passed that, but I can't remember exactly the bill text, but it was a resolution basically saying we're not going to support electric vehicles and blah, blah, blah. So that passed, but my, taxation study did not. But again, those are the things that are progressive. That's where we're headed as Democrats, and we're going to keep pushing for those goals. I do have another bill that I have decided not to move ahead with. It's drafted, but it would basically, look at increasing our EV infrastructure and public locations. So, city halls, libraries, trailheads, school districts, ball fields. After my resolution went down so soundingly, and we've got kind of limited time now.
Yeah.
We're getting close to the end of the session, and almost all of the bills with fiscal notes are going down. So I felt like I'm gonna gonna tuck that guy away and do a little bit more lobbying and vote whipping over the interim on that, and then bring it out next year. So, or next session. So and then Senator Pope has got a really great solar bill that would really be huge for renewable energy that, he got out of the Senate and is over on the House side now. So there's still some good work, but it's a bit of a Sisyphus effort. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Just rolling that rock
yeah.
over and over again. All right. Clint, I see you have your hand raised there.
Yeah, I have several issues that I like to bring up, but I don't know if we have time for all of them. And I don't want to basically take over the chat here. But one thing just recently came up is House Bill or House Resolution 24.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I urge you and all your fellow Democrats to vote against this thing.
Oh yeah, we definitely will be. So, my day job, I run a conservation nonprofit, and
right.
we
And I run one as well. So
yeah. Yeah, so we saw that guy coming, and unfortunately they were not able to kill it in the FRET committee, in that Federal Relations Energy Technology Committee. So that did pass out a committee on Friday night.
right.
And we're working with like my organization, Wild Montana, a handful, MCV, handful of other organizations, to do some lobbying so we can hopefully kill that on the floor. But yeah, no Democrat will vote for that.
Oh,
So
good.
rest assured there. And we do have good relationships with a lot of the legislators on the other side of the aisle, and we'll be talking to them about this. There have been a handful of public land transfer bills that have come through, either through the resolution form or an actual bill, and we've been able to kill most of them, which I'm very proud of.
Good. Hopefully that the same will happen on Senate Bill 14 when that comes to the House.
Yes.
That's still in the process, so I don't know how that's all going to go yet. But it got very discouraging. I was at the hearing on Friday, and there wasn't anybody there to support it yet. It was voted along party lines to proceed. And it's like, you got to
I
be
know.
kidding me.
The same thing happens with 24. There was no proponents, all opponents. And again, these things are passing through on party line votes, no matter how many, wonderful, good, concerned citizens that we have show up on them. There's been, as you probably know this, Clint, there's been a handful of really detrimental MEPA bills that have sailed through natural resources, and we haven't been able to stop them there. And I sit on that committee. And the way they're proposing them to us, there's like pretty bad, real bad, worst. And so, the way they present them to us is, which one do you want? And we're saying none of them.
Right.
So,
the only other thing I'll bring up, and then I'll be quiet here, is this slew of anti-wolf bills.
Oh.
I can't tell you how angry that makes so many of us here to see this session after session after session come up.
Yeah.
And it looks like these things are going to pass, but anything that you could do to stop it, it would be greatly appreciated.
Will do. And man, that has been, like I mentioned, there's a couple of these hot button issues for Republicans. They don't like electric vehicles. They don't like a woman's right to do whatever a woman needs to do with their bodies. They don't like, our wonderful transgender neighbors and friends, and they certainly don't like wolves. It's so interesting. Yeah, it's so interesting though. Ranchers, the real ranchers that will come in and testify, FWP has a great process for them. There's no problem from their side of things in terms of
Right.
how wolves are being managed. And so that's the frustrating thing as a legislator as well, when there's all these manufactured problems when there's not a problem. And again,
Right.
it's just Representative Zephyr says it really well. She calls them postcard issues. They're not real issues for Montanans, but they're, party line issues that they all slap on, their campaign materials and send it off to their constituents saying, hey, look, I followed the Republican playbook. And it kills me that, wolves, which are an integral component of our ecosystem, are getting pulled in this ridiculous conversation. And so we've got great folks on the FWP committee on the House side. Again, it's a little challenging being in the minority. We're not able to kill all
Sure.
those. We have killed a healthy handful of the wolf bills, and we're able to amend some before they went over to the Senate side. And, fingers crossed that our Senate colleagues are able to hold the line there. But yeah, man, Clint, that has been so disappointing. So,
Well, thank you for what you're doing. I appreciate it.
of course.
Yeah, those wolf bills are frustrating, especially when we're dealing with chronic wasting disease. It's like, part of that is the fact
Yep,
that we wiped out the natural predation of deer and antelope.
Right.
exactly.
So maybe we should stop doing that, and maybe our game animals will be healthy and not overpopulated. Well, so it is 5:42, and we promised 30 minutes, and Becky has given us at least 36. And I suppose, Becky, would you like to give a quick closing statement before we roll out of here?
Yeah, just thank you for being engaged. It, there's so many, as my kids even say right now, like these are dark days, and they're dark at the national level. They're kind of dark at the local and state level, but they won't be. And they won't be forever. And they won't be because of every person on this call, every person that showed up at that town hall, every person that waited in those extremely long lines on election day to vote. And this election didn't go our way. Well, it did in some ways. We have more people in the state legislature, more Democrats in the state legislature than ever. And we've got good plans to pick up a couple more seats in our next cycle. And so there's still great work out there being done, and we'll be able to do more with your help and your support and just you guys showing up. And so thank you. Thank you so much for doing that. And I can't tell you enough how great it was to head back to the Capitol after transmittal, after getting to, have a great town hall meeting with over 250 or 300 people. Yeah, 300.
310.
Amazing. So thank you so much. We so appreciate it.
Well, thank you for making it here this evening. And this is the last scene of the first season of True Detective. To paraphrase this, Matthew McConaughey points to the sky and says, remember, in the beginning, everything was darkness. And we'll look at the sky now, and there's light there. And Woody Harrelson says, well, it looks like the dark is winning. And Matthew McConaughey says, no, remember, it was all dark. The light is winning.
That's right.
It's
Yes.
like no matter how dark it is, there is some light out there, and it's our job to be that light. So thank you for helping be part of that, everyone here, and all of the people who will watch this later on YouTube. And just want to wish you all good evening, and we will be back next week. I don't remember who it is on the calendar, but there will be another one at this time, I think with Peter Strand. If I'm wrong, you'll be surprised by the news. So thanks for coming. Thanks, Becky. Thanks, attendees. And I'll see you next week.
Thank you all so much. Have a great evening.